Hello, welcome to my second video on test automation. In this video, I will be going through how to work with JSONPath and how we could process a large JSON object as a request using JSON body modification. We have different ways to create a JSON body of an API request. One way I have described in my first video, that is by developing JSON objects from scratch. Second way is we could keep a static JSON object inside our project and access it and modify the object attributes. That is what I am going to do here today. First, I will do a quick demo on how we could access different levels of a large JSON object with using JSONPath. So we will move to JSONPath. So simply you have to go into JSONPath.com, and here as the input you have to paste the large JSON object that you need to create for the API request. So here I have pasted that, and let us assume you have to access this start ID variable, so that is inside an array and that array is inside another attribute. So likewise, so this large JSON object has different levels. So let us assume we are going to access this start ID attribute. So what you have to do here, so first you have to go into this level, new items. So I will go from the beginning, folder.new items. So that here you can see the evaluated results, so that will display you this one, right? So that is here. Now you have to go inside the new items. You have new items, so dot new item, so that will display this one, right? So that is here, you can see it here. And inside new item, that there is an array, so in the array you have one object only. So with this one, so I will access the array now, 0th element, so that will display this one. So here in the result you can see, so in that I have to access this start ID, so array dot start ID. So here it reflects the result we need. So likewise we can access any level of this JSON object using JSONPath. So that is very simple way. So hope you got an understanding of how to work with JSONPath. Now we will move into the code and see how we could modify a JSON object using this JSONPath method. So I will move into the code. So I am keeping my large JSON object inside a static file called the sample01.json, so that is inside my resources. So you have a number of variables like this. So you have number of attributes first. So you have main ID, test ID, likewise, and different levels are here. So this is the same object I used for JSONPath. So this is the static JSON object, and I am calling it from my sample util. So here I have configured the path to the JSON static JSON file, and that will call here, and that I am setting it to a passed variable. So passed variable, and finally I will be modifying the attributes inside that JSON object using different values I need. So let us assume you want to modify this age as 25. So you just have to send it from the test level to the util level and modify it. So hope you understand this sample1.json and you understand how I call it from this level. So I have called it using the JSON path here, JSON file path, and I'm setting it into a variable passed, and I'm going to modify the variable attributes inside this one. Now from calling here different variable names that are in my JSON object, and I'm going to modify them with these values. So these are sent from the test level. So this is my test level. I have that method which we have in the sample util. So sample util.sample post request with JSON, and I am sending different values for the method variable. So when we go inside this method, we have username, user number, user code, balance. For those variables, I am sending the values from my test layer. For example, let us assume you have to modify the user number as 12. I am calling my method and sending the user number as 12 from here. So that will reflect here, and that will reflect here. Now this will find, pass.set will find the user number in my sample1 JSON. Here user number is here. It will find this attribute from my sample1 JSON, and that will modify it with the value I am sending. So I have sent 12, and that will modify the value as 12. So again, if you want to modify the user code, you can set the user code and send it from the test level and modify it like this, pass.set user code. And you can call different levels in your JSON body and modify them. Let us assume you have to call area code, that is deep inside your JSON. So that's here. I have called it using JSONPath. So you know how to retrieve attribute using JSONPath. So I have called it using JSONPath here pass.set that JSONPath, the same thing we did in the JSONPath demo, and I am going to modify it with the area code. So this is referring here. So this is sent from my test layer here. So this will set, so pass.set, this will override the existing value in the JSON object with the new value we are sending from the test layer to the util layer. So hope you got an understanding how to modify this static JSON object with the values you need. So like this, you can modify any of the attributes from that large JSON object and create whatever you need, whatever JSON request you need. So so this is about modification. Now we will see how we could assert. In the test layer, I have modified the JSON object and I have sent it. So here sample post request with JSON I'm sending, and I'm keeping the response and response code as well. So these are for my reference. Keeping the response code here, I'm calling them here and asserting it. So here I have asserted 200. And again, you can what you can do with JSONPath is, let's assume you get a large response after this one, and that you have to access different levels and assert. So let's assume your response is something like this, and you have to access this area code and assert it into 1 2 3, or you have to access this start ID attribute and assert it into this one. So you can do it simply and easily with JSONPath. So here what I have did is, I keep a string variable start ID, and I am going to call the JSONPath way. So JSONPath.read. So here I don't need to set anything, I just need to read, right? Before that, you have to convert your JSON response to a string. So sample util.response, that is the response of the previous request, and I have converted it into a string. Then again, after that only I have to call this start ID. So after that I can call JSONPath.read response of create user. So that is this one which we converted into a string, and from that one I have to give the JSON path correctly. So this is the path where we go and find here, right? So this one is start ID, so you know how to get the JSON path to that one. So that is the same thing I have used here in my test layer, and give the path. And again I have to replace these two brackets. So what I have done that, so JSON path will return, by default it will return to brackets like this, so we have to remove these two and get the value, right? So here I have replaced the brackets with empty, and that will remove the brackets and return the correct value for our start ID. So finally you have to just soft assert the start ID, which you retrieve using the JSONPath method, JSON pathway, and the expected value what you are expecting in the test case. So that will easily assert to this start ID that is inside different levels of a large JSON object, and you can easily retrieve the values like that and assert to the expected values you need. Yes, that's it from today's video. Hope you got a better understanding about API automation using JSONPath and how we could work with modifying the static JSON objects, and how we could reproduce different JSON objects with different values, and how we could reuse them, and how we could assert to different attribute values from different layers. Yes, thank you for watching. See you in the next video.